Hello, everybody. I'm very happy to host this TV show in collaboration with Virginie Geron. Today, we have the honor to welcome a well-known American figure, a defender of free speech, Michael Shellenberger. Hello, dear.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. You became famous in Europe with the revelation of Twitter files. When Elon Musk 3 years ago entrusted you with analyzing, releasing them to the public, these revelations made many of us realize the extent of political control relayed by FBI over social media platforms such as Twitter. I think it was a turning point for all of us here. Turning point, of course, in the United States. But now there, you will tell us, but I think there in the United States, it was clear now that there was a manipulation. In Europe, the opposite is happening. Freedom of expression is shrinking day after day. And we can say some example here. At the European level, there is the DSA, chat control, democratic shield, and now sanctions against so-called foreign agents, often labeled as Russian agents, such as Jacques Beau or Xavier Moreau, which is a French citizen, by the way. In France, the situation seems even worse. There is the creation of Viginem Agency. 1 year ago, and you know it, Pavel Durov, the leader of Telegram, was arrested because he didn't want to control, to survey the user of Telegram. Emmanuel Macron himself promoted a media label that signifies that he will say what is a legitimate media and what is not. And fact-checking platforms are increasing since COVID, sponsored by state. And at last, and you know it, the Twitter files you revealed. And you said that was a censorship industrial complex, big corruption over our eyes. So can you tell us, first of all, how did you react when you saw the Twitter files, American Twitter files, and now the French Twitter files?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be here with you all and to have this conversation and exchange information about what's happening. The main feeling I had doing the Twitter files and watching what's happening in Europe is fear. Fear that there is a concerted secret effort by our governments to censor us behind closed doors. There's multiple aspects of this that are important and that were revealed from the Twitter files. The first is that there is a censorship industrial complex, and that's an important phrase to understand because it comes out of the military industrial complex. So we see figures who were involved in the intelligence community, the CIA, the FBI. It's the same pattern really around the world, who are involved first in spreading disinformation and then demanding censorship on the basis of that disinformation. That's an important distinction because one of the claims that the censors make is that they're interested in censoring false information. In truth, what they want to do is censor accurate information. I'll give you a few examples. They wanted to censor the conversation about whether COVID came from a laboratory in China. They did. They censored that, and they claimed it was false information. We now know that that's where the virus came from. They censored information that said that the COVID vaccine would prevent infection and prevent transmission. That also proved to be accurate information that they censored. They censored information about the Hunter Biden laptop, which showed a vast influence peddling scheme by a presidential candidate. They claimed it was false. It was true. So the most important thing to remember is that these are holistic information operations run by the intelligence community, of which censorship is one aspect. But the overall goal is information control and opinion control. And it's motivated by the loss of control over the media and information environment that the intelligence community and governments felt that they had ever since World War II. social media is a disruptive technology. It allows for people to communicate on their own. I think the other thing that's worth pointing out here, and because people forget, is that the truth always emerges through dialogue. This is something that we've known since Socrates, but we have to be reminded of that. No single person is the repository of true information. It's also the case that people are actually err on the side of being stubborn in their beliefs rather than gullible. The basic idea put forward by the censors is that we have to protect the public from false beliefs. In reality, that's not how we form our opinions. We form our opinions in conversation with others, including with people that we disagree with. So the things that these people say that they want to censor us for are essential aspects of the human condition. Everybody hates, everybody gets information wrong, and everybody lies. And the idea that somehow the intelligence community and government officials are the sole repositories of truth who should decide what the public is allowed to say is a totalitarian idea, dates back to the Spanish Inquisition. It is the gravest threat to Western civilization. Free speech is a principle that I personally, it's one of the few political principles that I would die for. And I'm here in Europe to raise the alarm and to find allies to fight the censorship industrial complex.
Now, we will open the debate, but just a few questions before. Would you say that in USA now it's over, this censorship, or not?
I'm afraid it's not. The temptation of everybody when they come to state power is to control information. The Trump administration has done some very positive things to shut down the censorship industrial complex. It defunded the National Science Foundation, which was in the process of assigning special authorities for trusted flaggers, the similar situation here in Europe. And it also shut down the censorship operation at the Department of Homeland Security. However, we have not seen the reforms that we need to see at the Central Intelligence Agency. We've not seen the reforms that we need to see at the FBI. We've also just saw recently, just this fall, a meeting at Stanford University, which is one of the epicenters of the censorship industrial complex, involving representatives of the European Union, the Australian government, the Brazilian government, and the same actors who were involved in creating the censorship industrial complex. So for me, this is not by any means over. The price of freedom is eternal vigilance, and that's, I think, what we need to be engaged in.
Okay, and can you tell us a few words on, I know it's very huge, Virginie Geron already showed us the files, but
Yes.
On French Twitter files?
Yeah, well, this was a surprise for me. I've had the Twitter files now for 3 years, but we continue to discover information in them that was not available. And what we've learned from that is that President Macron was himself personally involved in a coordinated secret effort working with French NGOs, supposedly non-governmental organizations, many of which have either links to the intelligence services or funding from the government, to do a coordinated effort through the judicial system of France to essentially put pressure on Twitter to allow special access to Twitter data by these NGOs. This was such a broad scheme that it even involved Miss France, incredibly enough, who somehow got herself involved in this effort to demand censorship. I had never seen a head of state be involved in the censorship industrial complex as directly as Macron. The other thing that's important that comes out of the French Twitter files is that the dominant global model of censorship, which is assigning this special authority to decide what's true and false to these so-called trusted flaggers, that was developed by the French government beginning what was known as the Pleven Law, starting in 1972. And so unfortunately, France, who we all view as a country committed to liberté, in fact, created the seeds of and the functional model of the censorship industrial complex.
Thank you. We're going to open the debate. We have the pleasure to be with 3 MEPs. So thank you to be here. We are with Virginie Geron. Virginie Geron, bonjour. You are MEP, activist for free of speech since the beginning, since the COVID. And you are working on DSA committee. We are also with Fidias Panayiotou. Bonjour.
Hello. Pleasure to be here.
You are from Cyprus. You are a non-attached member of the European Parliament. That say you have no party. You are free. You are independent.
Yes.
And you are also independent when you are talking. You are very famous for that, of course. So we are going to talk about that after. And we are with George Piperia. Hello.
Happy to be here.
You are a Romanian professor in law and from the European Conservative and Reformist Party. Of course, we know you and we have already worked together on what happened in Romania.
Especially about the cancellation of election. Yeah.
Yes, and so we are going to talk, of course, about that. And you initiated a first vote on a motion of censure against Ursula von der Leyen, and that's very important also. But I'm going to begin with Virginie Joron. Virginie Joron, you made these invitations, and you are working since a very long time now on censorship. Do you think France is particularly concerned by this censorship today?
Thank you, Clemence, to be there with us, and thank you, Michael, to be there also, because it's a very an honor for me to have you here in this parliament. Why? Because you are the first to open the secret book. And when I saw that, the Twitter fight from US, I said, what? We was right. I said, yes, it was very important because, like Clemence mentioned, I was involved during the pandemic COVID, and to raise to the people how they are too secret around this file, like the contract, very secret, and also today, because also with the text message, we didn't know what they negotiate. Yeah. And also the last point that it's this with new report, and you targeted France. And it's true, because as I can saw since this year, their parliament, Brussels and Paris are very closed. Why? Because they use now new tools to control information. They use, like you mentioned it, like words that we can share to protect the users and consumers, like hate speech, disinformation. But now they use these words against consumers and users to pretend to protect this democracy, but it's not democracy. And it's very important that the reason I put this all these reports, because when we are this kind of fight here, we need some source. But because they said, yes, we are conspirationists, we are from right wings, and that's the reason they try to push down all arguments, very clear and very important for citizens. And that's my job that I want to continue, and that's the reason I'm very pleased also to be with some other resistance, some other free speech, to MEPs that they want free speech. And the first best example for me, since all these the tools that the Parliament tried to make in the front, DSA, Media Freedoms Act, we have IA Act, we have DMA, we have a lot of new regulation, but it's true. We can saw at every moment that it's not for us, it's against the citizens that they want a new thought of thinking. And that's the reason for France, we can see all new weeks how Macron go more and more strong against free speech. Mm-hmm. Clemence mentioned it. It's now a question to speak about a label, like a sticker for good media and wrong media. Mm-hmm. That the reason is pushing very much to implement the DSA against Musk. That's the reason we have this kind of feeling here. And what I can see now that some people like us, we are more and more connected to fight this, because we can see a new media like Tocsin, like some other, like Ligne Droite, Frontière in France, and I think it will be the next step. And me, the best words that I heard since the election from Trump, it's Musk when they said, we are the media. That's the reason, since this phrase, they are crazy there and they want to control everything and to use this kind of new tools, DSR, even the shield of democracy. But it's not shield of democracy. It's a shield against democracy. Because they don't like voters, they don't like the citizens, they don't like that you criticize just the value of Europe. If you criticize the value of Europe, it's not the narrative that they want to implement everywhere. That's the reason now we are in war. It's true. We are in war, and we have to continue the fight here in this parliament and everywhere in the national countries that we are, and France the first. It's the first country here in Europe very, very against free speech. But why? Because Macron is losing the power. That's enough.
You want to answer?
Yeah, well, on the last point, I think it's obvious why the politicians are doing this. They're afraid of losing power. I mean, we see Macron has 15% approval rating. Merz has 20%. I think Keir Starmer has 25%. It's obviously related to the rise of populist parties. It's around the concern around mass migration. They use the excuse of censorship as a way to protect vulnerable people. But the people they're trying to protect are themselves. They're trying to protect the most powerful people. When you look through history, the only people engaged in censorship are oppressors. The victims, the resistance always use free speech. Free speech is always a tool of the people. And censorship is always a tool of oppressive governments. So that's the first clue that this is a regime that recognizes its own unpopularity and is seeking illegitimate tools to maintain it.
Fidias Panayotou, you fight for direct democracy. How is that important for you today when you hear Virginie Giron saying maybe now we have to make the world, we as the media now, real? Do you think it's possible, and are you really fighting for this?
First of all, I think it's important to understand what is the problem that we're talking about. We're talking about millions of posts that are uploaded every hour on all the platforms. And the question here is, how do we moderate this? How we allow one post to be, and how do we take down another post? Some form of moderation it needs to be. Like, for example, like when I cannot be naked and like be uploaded online. So it needs to have some moderation. But the question here is, how do we do this to preserve freedom of speech? And the way that we are doing it right now in Europe, I don't think is the way with fact checkers, because and especially because they are paid from the government. So I don't trust that someone gets money from the government and that has the source that is something true or not. So what we need to have some good steps, which one step was what Twitter was doing, X is doing. What is how they call them? When they
community notes.
Community notes, yes, the community notes is a good step forward. It's not the full solution to the problem, and we need to be investing now with AI and all other forms of investment to solve this problem. So we need to move in this direction. But I think it's maybe because we discovered some stuff that became in the past, but I think overall we are in a better position now that Elon Musk acquired Twitter and he leaked all this stuff, and also Pavel Durov also is fighting with Telegram. And I think we saw as example, like Facebook now is doing community notes, YouTube is more said about the censorship. So I think we are in a better spot than what we were before, and we want people like Elon Musk and Pavel Durov to step up, because it gives also the other people the room, and like they are to the public opinion that they should do the right thing, all the other platforms. So I think we're in a better spot right now, but it's very important for us elected officials to be talking about this constantly, because this is like one small regulation, one small thing that can happen can take back all what the progress that has been done. So it's important to keep fighting, keep mentioning that freedom of speech is the most important, is the bedrock of democracy, because as you mentioned, like If there is no dialogue, there is no democracy, because this is what's the basis of democracy, the dialogue. And we need to have all the opinions on the table. Even if we think that it's extreme or not, we need to hear them. And people are smart enough to decide. And this is what kind of Community Notes is doing, because it's giving more information to the people.
Right.
If this is factually incorrect, they say it. Not less information, we hide information. So yeah, that's kind of my perspective. And since I was a YouTuber before and I have millions of followers online, I understand how social media works. I understand this game, and that's why I'm in these committees with my friends here, and we're fighting about this, and we will keep fighting for this.
Do you agree with him?
Yeah, I would just add, I totally agree, and I would just add to the only solution to hate speech and misinformation is free speech.
Yes.
There is no way to combat hate speech and misinformation with censorship. You have to have the conversation. That's the heart of freedom and democracy.
Who defines what is hate speech?
Yes.
Yes.
Of course.
And
Yeah.
disinformation
Yeah.
also. What
Yeah.
is it?
And malinformation. These are some words that are throwing. It's like,
Makes sense.
what do you even mean? Like, what do you define? And who is up to who is going to define this?
Well, and in fact, we've seen that where, for example, one could say that the justification of the colonization of the United States is a defense of genocide because a genocide of indigenous people occurred. So you could call that hate speech. You could say, I prefer living in the United States than living in Africa, a form of hate speech. You could say, I prefer not to have so many immigrants here. That could be called hate speech. It's a completely subjective category. Community Notes is the right spirit of it. You don't even need it, of course. You can just reply to false information. That itself is an incentive to be accurate, to not be embarrassed. And you're right, it has been spreading. Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Meta, Facebook, Instagram, in January announced that he was moving to the Community Notes model of
And he
fact-checking.
admitted that was censoring stuff.
Yes.
Which is crazy.
Yes, he apologized for censoring the Hunter Biden laptop. He apologized for censoring COVID vaccine information and also for the COVID origin story.
Unfortunately,
Georges Péperet.
unfortunately, in Europe, they still continue to do
Yes.
fact-checking with this sensors industry. Let me start by saying something as a principal matter. Digital Services Act should not exist from the beginning. Why? Because there are some rumors saying that DSA was a result of a discussion or, I don't know, an intention of revenge of a single people against Elon Musk. I'm speaking about Thierry Breton. Thierry Breton is the former commissioner for internal market, and at least that is he's telling to us he was the promoter of this DSA. But the original idea of DSA theoretically could be considered as being good. Because first of all, theoretically speaking, it's intended this DSA to protect the consumers against the abuses of very large online platforms, and second, to protect the loyal competition and to protect the small entrepreneurs, which are somehow forced to do their businesses on the platforms. Two good reasons to have a kind of regulation. But what happened was that they perverted the scope of this directive, and they perverted in a very, very bad manner. First of all, it's about the so-called illegal content. Of course, illegal content is, for example, to promote pedophilia, to promote human trafficking, to promote drug traffic. But illegal content is not opinion, political opinion. Actually, political opinion is protected by the European Court of Human Rights, and it's about 50 years of protection of this freedom of speech. You know, it's a kind of silly. Yesterday we had here a ceremony for the prize, the Sakharov Prize for freedom of thought and the speech. And why it's silly? Because this European Union is continuously shrinking the liberty of the freedom of opinion by the way of, for example, the so-called democratic shield,
Yes.
which is, as Virginie said, is not a democratic shield to protect democracy, but it's against democracy. How they weaponize this DSA? They consider the opinion as being illegal because you are against the mainstream opinion, the official opinion. They consider as being illegal false information. You know, an information could be false, an information could be a lie. But false information, lying, is not illegal. Is not against the law. It is against the law. For example, if you lie to people in order to convince them to go grooming, to go to pedophilia, to go to human trafficking, etc., etc. But you can, for example, in an honest situation, send to the people a false information that doesn't transform you into a criminal, into a I don't know, into an illegal kind of behavior. Second, they gave police and even judicial powers to some anonymous people, like fact checkers, like trusted flaggers, even like whistleblowers. I don't know who is the one who censors me. I don't know who is the one who is reporting me to Facebook, for example. And not even I don't know them, because they are anonymous. I cannot sue them. I cannot complain. I cannot have a contestation, an efficient kind of, I don't know, prove them that I am right and they are wrong. I cannot do this. There is no efficient way to do this.
Right.
They said because, for example, you were a conspiracy theoretician, you are no longer reliable. This content is not longer reliable, and they, you know, and they say, I don't care about the fact that now, as we speak, the only way to speak to the people is to be on the social market. I don't care about this. I don't care about this because the only thing I'm interested in is to carry the so-called official truth. And there is more, and is worse than this. I think that all of you are somehow aware about the so-called noble lie. Let me give you an example. There was a former president of the European Commission, Mr. Juncker, who exactly like this said, who expressly said, if things are going very heavy, you have to lie to them. Them who? Us, the public opinion. So they not only regulated the so-called illegal content, they said there are some truths which are damaging. And you have to avoid those damaging truths.
Right.
And instead you have to use the noble lie. What is noble lie? You don't have to know anything about what happened in the pandemics, because we are working for you. And there are some truths about these pandemics, I don't know, policies, that you don't have to know because it's damaging you. And what about this industry of censorship? There are NGOs, actually they are not NGOs, they are publicly funded. There are
Right.
NGOs making tens of billions of euros from here, from the European Union, in order to do what? To fact check you, to flag you in a trusted manner, and to whistleblow you. And this is the way they succeeded, at least partially, they succeeded to keep our voice shut. You remember about the so-called sanitary belt, cordon sanitaire? We are, even now, as we speak, into a cordon sanitaire, into a sanitary belt. You know why? Because we are considered as being somehow of savage animals, or I don't know, savage pathogenic agent, and we don't have the right to contaminate people with our ideas,
Right.
with the truths, and with alternative truths. And this is why I said that DSA should not exist, but if this regulation still exists, we have to go back to the origin and to give to the people the real understanding of this DSA, meaning the purpose is first of one, to protect the consumer of digital services, and second, to protect the small entrepreneurs.
Yeah, you brought up so many important points. I mean, maybe the most important is that the advocates of censorship are constantly accusing their opponents of the very thing that they're doing.
Yep.
In psychology, we call this projection, but in the case of the intelligence agencies and the advocates of censorship, it's a deliberate strategy. So to give you one example, they accuse people of conspiracy theories while they spread the conspiracy theory, for example, that the Russian government is secretly bribing European politicians. We saw this happen in the European elections last year.
Yeah, I was called by Madame von der Leyen a friend of Moscow, myself.
Right.
Yeah, because just because of me having the audacity to register a motion of censure against her.
This is a constant theme. This is McCarthyism from
Yep.
the United
Yeah.
States.
Yeah.
It's they're spreading conspiracy theories about their opponents. It's completely illegitimate. They have no evidence for that. They claimed with the Hunter Biden laptop a vast conspiracy theory, as opposed to the obvious truth that a drug addict and alcoholic had dropped his laptop in his bathtub, and we had the receipts from the computer repair store. So they were spreading a conspiracy theory about it. They accuse their opponents of hatred. These are people that are filled with hatred. These are people that loathe the people behind the cordon sanitaire. It's pathological. They're constantly accusing people of spreading an infodemic, of spreading misinformation as though it's some sort of a disease vector. So this is a deep pathology inside of the most powerful institutions in Europe and the United States.
Michael, let me ask you something because it's for me a philosophical starting point. Who is worst? The so-called conspiracy theorists, which may or may not have truth,
Right.
may or not be, may or maybe not wrong. So who is worse, the conspiracy theorist or the conspiratorists?
Obviously the latter. All investigative journalism begins with theories. You suspect something and you investigate it. So the attack on people for engaging in conspiracy theories is an effort to stop critical thinking, critical questioning, critical theorizing. Clearly, to make an accusation, you need to have the evidence.
Yes.
But to know to search for something, to suspect that something is wrong, involves those theories. So you're absolutely right. I would also note that in many of these cases, they know perfectly well that there is no tie between Putin and anybody that they're accusing. So they're deliberately lying. They're not even speculating.
It's a noble lie, yeah?
Yes.
It's a noble lie.
That's
Yeah.
what they believe.
So,
Yeah.
I want to speak about this cordon sanitaire because I am independent here in the European Parliament.
But you are in the cordon sanitaire.
I'm
Yeah.
not.
You are in cordon sanitaire also?
No. That's why I want to talk, because I want to defend my friends here because
Yes.
they are in the right-wing groups. So this is what they are doing. They're people, the rest of the parliament, they are trying because they want to keep the power.
Exactly.
They say, oh, we don't speak with them, we don't vote with them, even if they fucking agree.
Yes,
Even
yes,
if
yes,
they
yes,
agree
yes,
on the
yes, yes.
content, they don't vote because they're. So this is madness. This censorship, it became mainstream here in the European Parliament, and it's unacceptable. We need to fight it also. So this is an indication, also the censorship that they are
Yes.
using.
But-
Yeah.
Yes, if you permit, I want to agree with you and to give an example, because we spoke about censorship, we spoke about contents illegal, but the new step here, it's democracy. And I just want to remind an example. It was during the summer 24, with the new, just after the parliament election. And Mr. Breton sent a letter to Elon Musk because he wants to organize a debate with Donald Trump. And for me and for everybody, it was completely crazy because he used DSA to impose the regulation from EU to USA. It was completely crazy because it's what? Debate between Americans who is using a platform American. Are you crazy or not to pretend to interfere on this debate? But it's a very important example because now we are on a table this problem that you want to impose the DSA in USA. And I think it's very important to have you here because they're a little bit afraid to Donald Trump and Washington. Because at the end, you are the first country in the world that you can bring democracy that you made since a long time. Now that you want to, that also we can see that Donald Trump wants to speak peace. Now it's a bad word today to speak about peace. Since a long time ago, it was a war, a bad word, but now today it's usual and even it's protect to speak about war, but not peace. And it's very important to speak now about democracy because we are with my colleague Georges Piepera. He saw how the DSA was used during the election in Romania against democracy.
Right.
And for me also, it was another step to see how Brussels, how all these institutions want to protect the powers. But now it's an open book to continue the fight that my colleague mentioned, because as you can see, just Macron speak loud, not the other one. That's the reason I think we are on a key point, because we have the first now sanction against X. It's a 120 million against X. I was 2 days ago during this working group on DSA, and they don't know where they have to go because the regulations are a little bit clear, but the implementation, it's just, I want to share to you, it's politician implementation.
Yeah.
But now with negotiation, we are in a good way that also USA can have the lead on this file and to try to say, okay, you want this regulation in US? Okay, but don't go to America. That it was very interesting to see your work on this Twitter file in France because the national authority, French national authority, pretend to an American to ban a tweet because he criticized France, but from Austin, and the national authority asked this guy to erase this tweet. Also, it's not normally on the mandate of this regulation.
Right. Yeah, I mean, does anybody doubt that deciding to censor X is a political decision? I mean, even the way they decided to do it, they just lied the entire time. They go, we're not proposing censorship. They were proposing to decide who gets the blue check verification.
Exactly.
That is censorship by any definition. To your point, you're exactly right again. They intervene in foreign elections and then complain about foreign interference. BBC is one of the worst spreaders of misinformation in Europe. They edited a video of Trump on January 6th. He just decided to sue BBC. Well, BBC has been out there for years with its own fact-checking department demanding censorship of rival media. And that's something we haven't talked about, but the mainstream news media, much of which receives funding from the European government.
Yeah.
And we could go through it's basically all of the mainstream news media. So the biggest advocates of censorship are journalists working for the mainstream news media, which frankly means that they're propagandists, they're spreaders of disinformation, and they're censors. They're government actors pretending to be journalists. No true journalist would demand censorship of their fellow journalists.
I want to mention one thing which maybe we undermined. So one big problem with these fines to these big companies and with this DSA and all these big regulations, so many regulations, is that we remove the opportunities for companies to grow. We put administrative burden for them to comply with all these regulations, and that's why our companies in the European Union, they grow, the startups, the unicorns, all go and leave the European Union and they grow in United States.
Right.
So that's one of the big reasons, because we have, I call it slow agony with regulations to the company. They want to kill slowly the companies, and we don't grow. And we see the markets in the United States for the big companies that are growing, and we are compared to them a dot. So this is another big topic that we don't. These big regulations are against us because we remove the companies from the EU.
Yes.
I think we can make now a point on the link between censorship and democratic hold-up.
Yep.
And you have
Very
seen
well said, democratic hold-up. Yeah.
you have seen it in Romania because you know there was one candidate, Călin Georgescu, who was winning with the platform TikTok, helped by the platform TikTok, and they banned this candidate. So this is a perfect link, and this is very.
Yeah, let me start
Big
by
symbol.
let me start by saying this. The name of the candidate it doesn't even matter. Because it could happen to everybody. It could happen not just in Romania, but it could
in
happen
France.
also
Who is next?
in France. You know, France it's a very big risk next year. I don't know, next in 2017.
We have, first of all, we have another election in March 2020, local election,
But
and presidential in
you're gonna have the
27.
presidential in 2017.
27.
There's a race for everybody because if there is this precedent in Romania, which is a member state of the European Union, this could be repeated everywhere in United European Union. But the important is something else. The important is that the so-called freedom of speech and election at this moment became a regulated speech and regulated election. You cannot elect people which are out of grid. It's out of the system. You cannot do this because otherwise somebody from here, which is bothered about newcomers, will come. No, this is a newcomer. It's very important to give it away. And what happened was that they claim. They still claim so-called foreign interference, namely Russian interference, of course. But what happened was not just an interference. What happened was a direct order from here in order to somehow resolve the election. Because this was a huge surprise, a huge shock for all of us.
Right.
First of all, they
All of
decided...
them. For you, it was not.
For me, I said on the 6th of December in 2024, in the morning, all of the mass media asked me, what would happen if? I said, no, this is absolutely impossible because it's completely against the Constitution, against the European Union regulation. It cannot be done. And this happened. And remember, Virginie, that on the 3rd of December, so previously, the same Constitutional Court says we validate the first round of election. And in 3 days they came and said, no, we're going to cancel it.
Yes.
And what happened? Mr. Thierry Breton, which is not a very, very clever guy or wise guy, says if we did it in Romania, we're going to do it also in Germany.
In Germany.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
Yes.
And of course, we've seen that. There's a mayoral candidate from the AfD party in Germany named Joachim Paul.
Yes.
The election commissions, whose sole role is supposed to make sure that you're a citizen, the basic information. They wrote up a memo saying that because he thinks that Lord of the Rings is an inspiring conservative book, and a whole bunch, and that he went to a book fair where there were people that the German government don't like, that he couldn't run for office, so they prevented him from running. And of course, Marine Le Pen is currently being accused of doing something that the current Prime Minister of France was already guilty of. So this lawfare, of course, they attempted it with President Trump. It's part and parcel. It's simply an extension of the same censorship industrial complex.
And if I can add, because it was interesting, because came from this regulation from the DSM. And when we negotiate this regulation, it was just 2 words: process election, without guidelines, without nothing else. And after that, the Commission make a book like that, some new guidelines for the platforms. But no, the MEP didn't saw that. And even today, we don't know how the Commission makes the inquiry against platforms. Not transparent. We are not transparency about that.
Right.
It's crazy. And for the agenda, it was interesting to see the phrase of Thierry Breton. And after that, the speech of G.D. Vance. It was a very good speech that we share all this speech because it was very clear to see this in Europe, but it was for me very, I was very glad to see that we can share the same way, that the same vision. We are on the same line, we can see this thing, and it was very good to see that you saw that is happening now in Europe. Exactly. Now, because they are pushing too much about the implementation on DSA, and we can saw that with the new shield of democracy, because now they want to build a center of resilience. It was like the control of the election, but it's not on the competence of the Commission. It's new. It's a new tool that the Ursula wants to create because they're pretending that they are the power to protect the citizen against interference, against misinformation. And it's true. The second step is to institutionalize all these tools to have this new competence from the Commission to control and to ban the election.
Right.
And the Romanian example was the first pretension to use this for the next election.
Yeah. Well, you said, look at these tools they're using: censorship, undermining democracy, arbitrary powers that they're just arbitrarily taking, and secrecy. This is the Star Chamber, where you don't even get to see the information on which they're basing their decisions.
Maybe a word also, because we are talking about Emmanuel Macron, about Thierry Breton, and Cocorico. They are all French people, so it's just concerning for us.
Yes.
And I just wanted to know from the USA and from your work on Twitter Files, do you think France is particularly concerned, affected by this compromission, manipulation of media?
I think that, we see it in all European countries. France played a historical role in creating the trusted flagger model of censorship beginning 50 years ago. But Germany is very famous for their censorship, sending the police into people's homes. They sent the police recently into a famous conservative person's home for simply sharing a tweet critical of Hamas. And we also see in Britain, which I know is not part of the EU, but nonetheless, 30 police officers, 30 cases a day of police officers confronting people on their social media. So it's a pathology that is in all of the European countries.
Maybe if you want to add a word about Emmanuel Macron, who directly interfered in the election in Romania?
Yes, several times Mr. Macron received not just the former interim president of Romania, which is actually now the Prime Minister of Romania, Mr. Bolojan, but also several times received Mr. Nicu Șordan, which is the president of Romania. And you know what happened? Every time they go there, they had written reports from French secret services about so-called evidences about the foreign interference. We are speaking about, nevertheless, we are speaking about a judicial kind of endeavor. I'm a lawyer and a professor of law, and I know that the litigation should be granted only on evidences. We still don't have evidences. Macron is still trying to provide to our authorities so-called evidences about the Russian interference, and is not anything about like this proved until this moment. And the important is that Mr. Macron gave the support, gave the signature, they gave the support for these fraudulent authorities, and they now trust that people could again trust them when they are lying. Why? Because Mr. Macron, of course, it's a president of France, which France is our bigger sister, Romanian bigger sister. Yeah.
Do you want to add something about that?
No, he said it
Okay.
perfectly.
Fides Panayiotou, do you have from Cyrus maybe some example of this manipulation on medias? Or it's different?
I want to emphasize a bit because I'm a living example with social media. Social media is the power, has the power right now. I was the most voted member of the European Parliament in my country, Cyprus, and I was 24 without previous experience in politics. So they voted for me, they trusted me because of my social media presence. I explain everything and
It's
all
true.
this stuff. So the social media is becoming a prominent power for politics right now. So that's why we see all this attempt for censorship, for all this stuff, because they want to control. Because it was easier to control 3-4 TV stations, but now it's much more difficult to control millions of citizens.
afraid.
So
Yes.
now it's good, it's
Yes.
better because everyone has the power
Exactly.
to become a politician, to hear their voices and all this stuff. So I think this is a freeing experience that I feel as a 25-year-old to be able to do all this stuff, be a politician with with no backing of anyone, and just with the use of social media. So social media, we need to allow for everyone to have a level playing field for people like me to become politicians and all this stuff. And this will happen if we have freedom of speech. So this is kind of my...
Yes, but I agree with you. I use also a lot of social media, but just few words. I think if I can say something to Elon Musk, he has to continue to support you, to share this social media, and also to be more transparent if he can, because it's like a word that I said. If you will be more transparent than the Commission, we will win the war. You have to. If he has like 50 pages of the procedure from the Commission, keep open the procedure. For shadow banning, I heard in France they use too much shadow banning and use algorithms against some account. He has to open this. I think we will win this war if we are more than transparent than the Commission. That's my word if I can.
Amen
and
to
thank
that.
you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Michael
Thank you very
Schellenberger.
much.
Thank you.
Just in one word, are you
are
optimistic or
amazing.
not?
Yes,
guys
thank
are
you.
amazing. Thank you.
Are you
Appreciate it.
optimistic or not here for free speech? Just yes or no? Because
I think we're literally on the edge of we could go either way. Totalitarianism, democracy.
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.